that she's going to watch. I guess we're just going to pretty much start talking at the 11:30 mark.
Great.
Because we're live, so people can hear us now. Hello, everybody. So, I work with Joshua Yupin. He says he's known you since you were a little baby.
Yes, indeed. I've known Josh for a long time.
Good guy.
Good dude.
Yeah. Have you been watching many of these events?
I have.
Yeah. Do you ever watch John Oliver?
Not so much. I know him, but no.
he does this thing where his background now is this what he calls a white void. You got the white void behind you.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but.
Right. 'Do you live in the city or in the burbs?
In the city.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Hence my handle, John. City Listings.
I saw that. Didn't know if it was for work or social.
Should we kick it off?
Yeah, sure. So we'll get started, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is John Grosser. I'm a partner at Royer Cooper, Cohen Braunfeld, RCCB, we like to call ourselves. We're a full-service law firm headquartered in Center City, Philadelphia. We have offices in Conshohocken and New York City. We're a firm of about 50 lawyers. I personally am in the real estate practice group, and I head up what we call our hospitality industry group. And that's a group that focuses on hotels, restaurants, and other hospitality venues like concert halls and golf courses and things of that nature. I've been practicing for over 20 years, exclusively in transactional real estate. Before I introduce our guest speaker today, I'm going to do some housekeeping and make a few announcements on behalf of ILC. So if you'll bear with me. So tomorrow, coming up on the live chat is Phil Stefano of Sightline Hospitality, and he's going to discuss the operational challenges of reopening with ILC founder and chairman Andrew Benioff. On Friday, Adam Rappaport will be with us. He's the editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit magazine, and he's going to wrap up the week discussing the new world of food with Eric Warner from ILC. So that should be really very interesting. You can check out the website. It's ilccongress.com to see those and other events advertised. ILC would like to thank its presenting sponsor today. That's Ivy by Go Moment for supporting the digital events. We have more partnership and sponsorship opportunities available. So if you're interested, look up Jackie Kelly on the website. That's ilccongress.com. Finally, please consider donating to ILC. ILC is heavily reliant on donor contributions for events like this. So they'd really appreciate anything you can do to keep these live events going through this challenging time. You can look up donation opportunities and how to do that on the website at ilccongress.com. So, and then when we're done, before we wrap up, I'm going to make a few announcements as well. But right now, I'm going to kick it off with our host and presenting speaker today, which is Jacob Cooper. Jacob Cooper is a partner and director at MSC Retail. MSC Retail is a full service, well, it's really I shouldn't say full service, it's a specialty brokerage firm specializing in retail and also all aspects of retail consulting. They are headquartered in the Philadelphia region with offices in California as well. They are really the premier retail real estate broker in the region, have significant relationships and contacts with many national retailers, restaurants, hoteliers, and others. So Jacob is really an expert and really able to talk to this topic in particular. So just a couple of words about the topic. It's no secret that retail was in a decline even before COVID-19 came upon us. There were record closures in 2019. A lot of stores like Payless and Sports Authorities, very iconic brands, have gone away. If you've been watching the news lately, you know that J. Crew and Neiman Marcus have both filed Chapter 11. I saw last night that Gold's Gym did as well. So the COVID pandemic has really accelerated some difficulties and some troubles and some closures in the retail space. So Jacob is here. He's going to help us make a little sense of this, what we can maybe expect in the future, maybe the state of affairs today, some changing trends and some evolving industries and things that come out of this COVID, maybe some positive things as well. Maybe not all negative. I think we all need a little bit of positive right now. So with that, Jacob, why don't we start by tell us a little bit about MSC Retail, a little more than what I said, and a little bit about yourself and what you do at MSC in particular.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Thanks to ILC and Andrew for reaching out and allowing me to join the conversation. MSC Retail is, as Jonathan mentioned, commercial real estate brokerage headquartered in Center City, Philadelphia, with offices in Los Angeles and New York City. And as Jonathan mentioned, our primary focus is retail, restaurants, and hospitality. So in as simple as I can make it, we help tenants find spaces, we help landlords find tenants, and we really try to think on a more consultative level with regard to placemaking and strategy, especially in such a transitory market as we find ourselves in right now. The idea of ground floor retail space and ground floor space in general is, I think all members of the real estate community are beginning to rethink what that structure is moving forward.
Great. And how about you in particular? Do you have an area that you specialize in, or just the three areas that you discussed already?
So my focus is primarily Philadelphia region, and my focus is really Center City, Philadelphia. So I can give you a hyper local opinion on what's happening really on the ground here, but also give you obviously some industry wide information as well.
Fantastic. So to get the discussion kicked off a little bit, we've all seen, if we've been watching the news, that Amazon is really kind of doing pretty amazingly in this particular climate. But as I mentioned before, certain retailers, clothing stores, really sort of suffering. Can you give us just sort of like a 10,000 foot view of the retail landscape? Who's doing well? Who's suffering right now?
Sure. Obviously, retail was, as I mentioned, a state of transition pre-COVID, and it was a period clearly when online shopping and online commerce was increasing. Surprisingly, not as much as we all think it was, really 1 percentage point per year on a year-over-year basis. So it wasn't drastically impacting the brick and mortar space as we all think it had been. I think one of the primary takeaways of where we will find ourselves after COVID coming out in the summer and the fall and really into next year is the significant increase in velocity of online shopping. Some industry experts are stating that online shopping in general could double to about 20% of total total commerce, and we're just going to have to wait and see. I think that to your point on bankruptcies, um, again, we were going to anticipate significant bankruptcies, largely from what I will call legacy soft goods apparel stores, legacy department stores that you could already tell were under significant pressure, probably because of private equity takeovers years back, and they had been burdened with significant debt, and their balance sheets weren't healthy. And that compiled with this environment of really terrible in-store sales, that velocity of bankruptcies will only increase. So we're anticipating a pretty tough time moving forward for the next few years for the retail industry in general. And I'm sure we can get into restaurants as well, but across the board we're feeling pressure and pain across the entire industry.
Sure. Well, that's a good segue, because you can't deliver a seat inside a restaurant. I mean, you can certainly deliver food, but you can't have the experience of going to a restaurant online. So, and a lot of cities, Philadelphia among them, Chicago, New Orleans, a few others, were really undergoing a sort of a renaissance in the restaurant field, with a lot of celebrity chefs and very acclaimed food. What's going to happen there? People really like to go out to restaurants. Are they going to open back up? Are they going to go the way of the dinosaur? What's going to happen with the restaurants? And maybe especially talk about the independent restaurants,
Sure.
Not the Cheesecake Factories.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when you think about the food and beverage industry in general, you really do have to segment the operations and the operators into various types. So you can think about fast casuals, which are the traditional, think about the grab and go restaurants, Sweet Green, Chipotle being the national examples of fast casuals locally here in Philadelphia. We have Honey Grow and others. Those fast casual restaurants are built for this type of environment. It's obviously not ideal to be functioning during a pandemic, but fast casuals are the way that they're made for what's called throughput, which is really pushing customers through the doors as quickly as possible, and getting the product as quickly as possible, and moving them out the door, which seems pretty prototypical in a pandemic. Where I think the biggest issues are going to be in the food and beverage industry are, as you mentioned, the independent restaurants. So think your traditional neighborhood sit down restaurant, where that owner may own 2, 3, 4, 5 local restaurants, doesn't have a significant balance sheet, doesn't have a back end staff or back end organization to really support situations like this. Those types of operations we would anticipate are going to be undergoing the most pressure, and I'll speak to a few points. What we're hearing in the industry are first likely mandated capacity reductions within those sit-down restaurants. So if you think about a 120-seat restaurant, inclusive of indoor, outdoor, and bar, some states are already talking about 25 to 50% reductions in capacity. So restaurateurs are actually going to have to physically remove seating out of the restaurants. They're talking about, obviously, PPP, protective gear for both front of house and back of house staff. Specifically with back of house, the challenging part of running a kitchen, for example, is thinking about social distancing in a kitchen. Very, very difficult operationally. Disposable cutlery and disposable menus and disposable salt and pepper shakers. And all of those things, in addition to what I'm sure will be more mandated rules and regulations with regard to in restaurant operations, it's going to be a very, very difficult 12 to 18 months for food and beverage users. And I would anticipate that a lot of now closed restaurants will not reopen, just because they're not going to be able to deal with the shackles of some of these regulations. Clearly, we've all seen that a lot of restaurants are trying to pivot to delivery and takeout model, and then you can really think about the challenges there. About their restaurants are not built for that model. They're not built for delivery and takeout. Some don't have, in urban areas, they really don't have the front of house space to set up that type of pickup. I would say food and beverage and restaurants in more suburban areas are a little bit more, can be more flexible with drop off and pickup and other things. But especially in urban environments, it's going to be a really, really hard time for restaurants, and we're going to anticipate a lot of turnover and unfortunately, vacancy moving into next year.
Just what are your restaurant clients doing now in terms of they're not operating? Are they paying the rent? Or landlords helping them out? What are you seeing?
So I think one of the bright spots of COVID is, not that there are many, but this situation is getting landlords and tenants talking, and it's getting landlords and tenants talking about rent as it relates to performance of the actual business. And what I anticipate is a short period of time, call it up. Landlords and tenants are going to be adjusting leases to reflect performance. And what I mean by that more specifically is really percentage rent structures, where tenants, for those that are not involved in commercial real estate and specifically leasing, where rent is a factor or a percentage of sales, and it's almost a shared risk model where landlords and tenants are more collaborative in the leasing process. In the very, very short term, we're finding that across the industry, both in food and beverage and retail, landlords and tenants are discussing short periods of rent deferral or rent abatement, which is typically a period of 30 to 120 days where rent is either forgiven in its entirety or deferred to a later point in time. What we're saying is a period of time over perhaps calendar year 2021 where deferred rent will be paid back, and that's. There isn't a hard and fast rule. I don't think there's an industry standard right now. But again, the good thing is that I'm finding that landlords are being flexible. And if I were to give a recommendation to landlords, they should be flexible, because working with the tenant in your space right now to help them through this difficult period is much better than having yourself an empty space. Sure. 6, 9, 12 months down the road. It's going to be a much more difficult leasing environment where, again, with increased vacancy, it's going to compress commercial rents. And as a landlord, you're really not going to want to be in a position with an empty space unless you had an otherwise different reason for recapturing space. You're really not going to want to be in the leasing market over the next 12 to 18 months. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Sure, that's incredibly logical. It makes a lot of sense. Are the landlords, have they come around to that point of view, or are they still?
Listen, commercial landlords are facing a lot of pressure right now, especially the ones that have significant retail holdings. They are on their heels every day, having really difficult conversations. So I feel for all of them. April rent commercial collections, what I'm hearing, have been reported to be somewhere in the 10 to 20% range, which is just disastrous. It may be worse than disastrous. A lot of the mixed use landlords that may own retail space on the bottom of, say, an office tower or a multifamily building should be where a majority of their rent roll, a majority of their income on a singular asset is derived from more stable asset class, like, again, multifamily or office in this environment, should also be, I believe, as flexible with their retail tenants. In those particular cases, retail is really an amenity for the users above. think about a coffee shop or a restaurant on the ground floor of, again, that office building or that apartment building. But the retail rent of that asset is not on a percentage basis. It's not a very large piece of the pie. So it's no different there. I would make the recommendation to those landlords as well that even though it may be easy to let that tenant go or let that tenant close, at least in the short term, I would try to be as flexible as possible in allowing your tenants to either defer or abate rent.
Now, sort of related issue, a lot of hotels, maybe with the exception of the higher end hotels, view F&B as sort of a loss leader, but like a necessary evil, perhaps. Do you think F&B is going to go away in hotels? Are they going to pare down those operations?
Yeah, I certainly don't think so, and I know that there are a lot of hotel-oriented industry folks on this interview watching, and I would say, to the point of hospitality, I think hotels have coming out the worst in the situation, and with hotels closed entirely, there's zero income from those assets. I think for hotels and even if you take a step back and look at even more experiential real estate, so you can think about restaurants and entertainment and live music and fitness. A lot of those assets that were actually probably the hottest coming into this crisis are being hit the hardest because of social distancing requirements. It is, I would say that there's going to be a short-term, very high pain point for those assets, but I think that they're going to be the ones that recover the quickest, which may be somewhat of an adversarial view to other industry experts, but hotels in general, I think, are such a unique part of human connection, of travel, of lifestyle, that they will recover quickly. And food and beverage within those assets have always been shared risk profile, meaning that landlords of hotels, operators of hotels, have always put forth the capital to build out the restaurants, and in most scenarios actually own those restaurants. So I don't see, I guess to your question, I don't see hoteliers and other hotel owners taking chips off the table to perhaps more limited service food and beverage. I think that the food and beverage aspect of hotels is going to be as critical as ever to attract a traveler. And I think that there's so many creative opportunities to engage the talented part of the food and beverage industry and bring them in, perhaps even more than they had already been, into the hospitality sector. So I guess the long answer to your question is no. I don't think that restaurants are going to go away in any form or fashion within the hospitality sector.
Can you prognosticate what do you think about timing? Can you guess? Are we talking about a year? Are we talking about 2 years?
Yeah, I think we're all going to be feeling pain for at least a year, and my hunch is that things will not be back to normal until next fall. A lot of institutional clients of mine are forecasting that we're not filling space really until fourth quarter of 2021. Which may feel drastic, but that's in order to be conservative in this market. That's really what we're looking at. In the short term, transactional retail real estate for the most part is frozen. There are certainly tenants out there that are going to be looking to take advantage of the situation as they did in 2008 and 2009, and there are going to be incredible opportunities for retailers to reposition their own portfolios and reposition their assets and obtain just fantastic deals because of we were reflecting back, I guess, to the last 6 to 12 and 18 months, we were actually in a relatively tight market. Really good real estate was hard to come by. It was becoming very expensive, especially for food and beverage users. Rents were getting we're just getting way too high, and the P&L for restaurants, rent was becoming too big of a portion of the P&L, and a lot of restaurants were just becoming unsustainable. But I would say, if you're a landlord, I would say look at your forecasting, and if you were anticipating a lease up by the end of calendar year 2020, I would probably push it back 12 months to be conservative, and it's going to be a long period of recovery. Until that time, I think it's going to be a slow. We're not. I don't think we're even experiencing the true downturn of rents and of vacancy. I think it's just over the summer and the fall, we're going to see a lot of closures, because tenants are going to have to be communicating with their landlords. They're going to want to try to come out of this situation, and are going to want to try to, again, drive delivery, drive takeout, temporarily open with social distancing. I think it's just going to be very difficult.
Well, hopefully sooner than later. So the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly been a change agent. We've changed our habits. A lot of us are ordering in, delivering more than used to. We're spending maybe more time doing home improvement. What trends are there? Trends that you're seeing that are coming out of this, or new sub-markets, subsectors of the retail market, other than delivery? What do you see?
Yeah, I think some of the trends that I'm excited about personally in the retail sector, I would say, first is retailers and landlords are going to have to look at space in a more flexible way. One of the trickiest parts of retail real estate and restaurant real estate is really how capitally intensive it is to build out space. And what I anticipate is that retailers are going to invest less in the build outs, and therefore are going to require less term and require more flexibility from landlords in terms of shorter terms, which will allow them to pivot both in terms of size, in terms of location. Obviously not ideal from the landlord's perspective, that they're going to get less commitment from retail tenants, but I just don't see a world in which tenants are going to be committing to longer terms after this pandemic. And I think that what that means is, for the consumer, is that retailers are going to be more flexible with their store design, more flexible with substituting and creating in-store experiences that may not be overly experiential, believe it or not, but they're going to be more flexible with the product, because they have to be, right? Retailers are going. I think one of the reasons why you saw a lot of these legacy soft goods retailers and department stores is because the in-store experience, the product experience, became stale, right? The retailers, they didn't invest in the store, and they weren't engaging with the customer. So again, what I'm excited about, I think there are a lot of brand experiences, a lot of stores that are going to create store ground floor experiences that will try to streamline the process between the product and the customer, as well as the supply chain, and get the product into the customer's hands quicker. And you're already seeing that with same day delivery and other things, but all of that has to really be integrated into the ground floor brick and mortar experience. And I know a lot of folks are working on that. So I think that those are two really important trends that are coming out of this as it relates to food and beverage. We at MSC have been talking about, listen, in Philadelphia, for example, and in major metros, it's very easy to fill up a restaurant on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, right? Those are the toughest reservations to get. But where you make your money as a restaurant is during the weekdays. So think Sunday through Thursday. And a lot of restaurant tours and restaurants are thinking about how to get their brand, how to get their in-restaurant experience, or even their food product, into the hands of their customer even if the customer is not able to join them in the restaurant themselves. So that's why we're seeing a lot of take home products, pickup, delivery, and it's allowing a lot of restaurants or a lot of the consumers to bring the restaurant experience into the home during the week. So I think that's a really important and nuanced shift in the food and beverage world. It was previously, I think it was just all about driving traffic into the restaurants from Sunday through Thursday. And, coming out of the pandemic, I think a lot of us are throwing up our hands and saying, you know what, I kind of want to eat at home during the week. I want to be with my family during the week, but maybe I just don't want to cook. But it's identifying that brand connection where, maybe I do want to have, for example, here in Philadelphia, I may want to have a star restaurant experience on a Tuesday night, but I want to have it in my home. And I think a lot of the larger, more mature restaurateurs are starting to think about how that connection is being made. And the first logical step in that process is really the take-home meals and the take-home delivery. But I can imagine that there are going to be other opportunities. For example, specifically the delivery model and ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens are off-premise preparation commercial kitchens where restaurateurs are actually able to outsource the preparation and the delivery of their food and not hamper their existing in-store restaurant experience with the difficult operation of the restaurant. So the restaurant delivery.
This is maybe more of a comment than a question, but you can imagine with autonomous vehicles, delivery vehicles, self-driving cars, drones, in the future, that might just facilitate that experience so much more, make it so much easier to bring those things right to your door.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that to your point, autonomous vehicles, I think, are going to be one of the most impactful things on retail and commercial real estate. I think we're almost there with Uber and Lyft, but there's one more piece of the pie to happen. And I think at that point, it's going to open up a lot of innovation within our industry.
Sure. Now, I think we're kind of coming up against our time, but just a couple more questions. So when you talked about being nimble, about investing more in less in TI, shorter terms, all of this sort of runs counter to the traditional model of the enclosed indoor shopping mall. Now, they were really having some difficulties before COVID hit. Is the indoor shopping experience, the enclosed mall, going to go by the wayside, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would imagine and anticipate there are going to be a lot of closures in the enclosed mall space. You're already seeing some drastically reduced valuations and stock prices from the traditional REITs that own those enclosed malls. What I think, again, what the pandemic is going to do is increase the velocity of innovation with regard to the adaptive reuse of a lot of those malls. I think that was slowly beginning to happen. What you can think about is that super regional malls across the country, what they do have is great access, right? They have great locations, great access. What they don't have is experience of what I think the current shopper and the current consumer is looking for. What I anticipate is that a lot of those enclosed malls will be reused. A lot of the real estate, for example, the parking lot out parcels of a lot of these malls will be looked at as development sites, be it for office or multifamily. And I think that's a good thing. I think that what a lot of people don't talk about in our industry is that the United States is drastically over retailed in terms of square footage per capita. We have, I think, eight times as much square footage per person than the next industrialized country in the world, which may be Germany. So we have too much commercial space. We have too much retail space. And I think that any opportunity for adaptive reuse for other asset classes is probably a healthy exercise for the entire real estate industry.
Well, thank you. Before we close, without giving away your secret sauce, so to speak, what's your focus going to be for the next 12 to 18 months? how are you going to make your bread?
Sure, sure. As brokers, as consultants in the industry, we're looking at our business and looking at our peers and really challenging ourselves to improve upon the ways in which we can service our clients, be that landlords and tenants. And I think we will have to adapt and innovate as all of our clients are going to have to do in the wake of the pandemic. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of that is going to revolve around more creative deal making and being responsive to the environment, being responsive to the needs of the clients. And I mentioned some of those, the ways in which the traditional long-term lease is going to evolve. So we're beginning to look at that, and again, a lot of our clients are going to be looking to us to and challenging us to come up with ways in which we can be responsive to their needs. But there's no doubt that the old the more traditional commercial, long-term commercial lease, especially in retail, is going to have to evolve, and that's really starts with us as deal makers and consultants. I think that's a lot of our secret sauce. I think we're working on ways to expand our platform, not just to be as brokers, but to be a little bit more full service. And we're working on those things across the board, and we're going to be excited to talk about them, after we get out of the pandemic.
Great. Well, Jacob, thanks a lot. You've really given us a lot to think about. It's a little bit of anxiety that we all have. Hopefully we see some silver linings. And I'm sure that, like myself, I'm very eager to get out, to go to restaurants, to go shopping. Hopefully we'll be able to experience that soon enough. Jacob is really expert in this field of retail. If you could use his expertise, certainly don't hesitate to look for him. MSC Retail, you can find him. And myself, if you need help either working your way through maybe PPP loans or workouts with the landlord or anything of that nature, you can find me on rccblaw.com. So we're here to help you any way we can. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that there were a couple of closing remarks, so I'm going to turn to those now. Bear with me one split second. Okay. So don't forget that coming up, Phil Trefino will be on Instagram Live tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Adam Rappaport, editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit magazine, will be speaking with Eric Warner at 4:30 on Friday. And check out the website at indiecongress.com for future digital events and for sponsorship opportunities. I really want to thank you all for joining. I hope this was insightful and helpful, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon. Thank you.